The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. On September the 9th, British-owned Anglo American announced it was merging with Teck to form a leading global critical minerals champion headquartered in Canada. Teck CEO Jonathan Price said, "This transition will create significant economic opportunity in Canada while positioning Anglo Teck to deliver substantial long-term value for shareholders and all stakeholders." It is one of a number of investments and trade deals that have been underway between British Columbia and Britain over the past 5 years. "We're working to build even stronger relationships with Canada and British Columbia," says Thomas Codrington, the British Consul General to British Columbia. Total trade between the UK and Canada is on the rise, largely thanks to the UK's response to leaving the EU. In 2020, Canada and the UK signed the Trade Continuity Agreement, and it serves as a showcase of the value of diversifying trading relationships. As a result, trade is up by more than 50% between 2016 and the first quarter of 2025 between Britain and Canada. I invited Thomas Codrington, the British Consul General in Vancouver, to join me for a conversation that matters about the potential and benefits of increased trade between the UK and British Columbia. I invited you, Thomas, first of all, welcome. I invited you to come to this conversation because, of course, both Britain and Canada, we're looking at the changing nature of our relationship with the United States. And when we take a look at the example of the UK following Brexit, the country pivoted quite quickly and set up trading relationships with other countries to ensure that trade would grow and be as robust as possible. And it serves as a good example of what's possible now that we see shifting sands in the United States.
We've certainly been on a journey since Brexit to try and build more or deeper trade ties with countries outside Europe. But a bit like Canada, our main trading partner remains and will always remain the EU. You can't really change geography. So the bit that is less obvious perhaps from Canada is the effort that the UK has been putting into its trading relationship with the EU as well. So for us, it's not either or, but certainly along with everyone else in the world, we're thinking about what the change in the US will mean for our own trading relationships. So although the EU is the largest bloc that we trade with, taken as a whole, the US is our largest single country trading partner. So just like Canada, we have some choppy waters to navigate.
With the changing nature of relationships with the United States post-Trump tariffs, and I know that the UK has gone a long way to working towards getting the best possible arrangement that it can, have you been directed to find even more opportunities to strengthen or enhance relationships between Britain and in particular British Columbia?
So I've been here in Vancouver for 3.5 years, and when I first arrived, my number one instruction was find ways to make more out of the economic relationship between BC and the UK. And that instruction hasn't changed. It's kind of who we are as a country. We look primarily for win-wins in around the world whenever it comes to the economy. So they didn't need to send me new instructions because that was already my marching order. What I do think is that looking at how Canada and BC has responded to that challenge does give us opportunities to work more closely together. I mean, the UK and Canada, we go way back. We have a lot of shared values. We think about the world in a similar way. We're kind of obvious people to do business together. And I think because we've been so obvious for so long, we sometimes haven't given each other the attention that we should. We've kind of taken that relationship for granted. And I feel like the changes in the South have helped both of us to realize that actually there's more we could be doing with our closest allies and partners.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. From your perspective, where are the strongest possible opportunities, like in the short run, to be able to say, look, we can move quite quickly and create opportunities for British companies here and Canadian companies in the UK?
Yeah, quick wins. Trade policy isn't famous for quick wins, but I think there's probably two that are on my mind, both of which we've already seen some progress on. One is Canada's quite a complicated market because every province has its own regulations and barriers and rules. And so to trade with BC, a UK company will usually land in Ontario first, and then because that's less
Bigger
time
market.
difference, bigger market, so on. And then we'll try and think about the rest of Canada from there and find that there's all sorts of obstacles in its way. Bringing down those interprovincial barriers not only makes it easier for companies to do that, to do business with BC, it also makes Canada more interesting to companies that might not even have thought about it before, because they'd have looked at it and thought this is all too complicated. But actually, if you can create a level playing field across provinces, that not only helps internal trade in Canada, that also helps international trade. The other thing on my mind is about how we recognise qualifications. So, say, Stu, you were an architect and you trained in Canada. You would have learnt almost all of the same standards and practices as I would have learnt in the UK training to be an architect. But if you wanted to do work in the UK, just going through the bureaucracy to have your qualification recognised would have taken 3 years. And the same for me, until a few months ago when we signed an agreement to recognise each other's qualifications, and now it would take you 3 weeks. And that makes a huge difference to businesses who are trying to find the best expertise to do a particular job. It makes projects cheaper in both places, it allows us to learn from each other, and it really helps that flow. There's much more we can do in that space, I think, particularly when it comes to professions like regulated professions, so architects, engineers, medical professionals, accountants, teachers, those kind of professions, to make it easier for people to move back and forth.
How tricky was it to recognize or come to an agreement to be able to recognize one another's qualifications?
So those negotiations are led by the regulators. We both have independent bodies that set the standards. And in this case, actually, both the government of BC and the government of the UK put a bit of funding towards making that collaboration happen. And it probably took about 2 or 3 years to achieve that. In trade terms, it's pretty quick.
Yeah.
These things can always go quicker. But if you think about, if you'd started in the process to be recognised as an architect 3 years ago, this agreement took less time to negotiate than it would have taken for your qualification to be recognised. So it's worth doing.
It is worth doing. Where else do you find that there are opportunities that we can remove some of those barriers? Are there particular sectors?
Yeah. So I think about the economic opportunity for both of us under 3 kind of headings. There's goods trade, and we have lots of data about that. But because of geography, and because BC mostly exports raw commodities, that's never going to be a huge part of our relationship until and unless BC moves up the value chain and produces more goods that are worth transporting by aircraft. At which point we'll see probably quite a lot more trade between the UK and BC. There are barriers there. Some of them are quite technical. They're about things like rules of origin. They're in particular sectors like cars, where BC taxes cars above a certain value, and Canada also separately taxes cars above a certain value, and the stuff around supply managed goods. So dairy is very expensive in BC because of the way that the federal government manages the supply of dairy, and it also tries to stop other countries from importing dairy. But these are all quite niche issues. I think the main opportunities are actually under the other 2 headings. So services, where both highly educated, English-speaking jurisdictions, just like architecture, a lot of professions have a kind of common heritage in terms of where they came from. So we talk the same language in business. And we're in interesting time zones, because if you have someone in Vancouver and someone in the UK, because of the time zones, you can cover most of the world. So a lot of companies have offices in both places to achieve that benefit. And that's where mobility of people is really what makes the difference. And then my third heading is investment. So the flow of money. So your intro was about Anglo Teck. That's a huge investment deal. We've also yesterday had an announcement from Quadrille, which is managing some of BC's pension funds, that it's going to put £2.5 billion into the UK's digital infrastructure and its industrial capacity. So investment flows in both directions, and that really relies on political signals. That's the most important thing for investors, to know that the projects that they're putting money into are going to bring a long-term reward. Their money is going to be safe, and that they're making a good bet, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I think governments have a really important role to play in producing and maintaining that stability for investors.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. So let's talk about energy, and in particular clean energy, because Britain remains, I think, more staunchly committed to net zero than maybe Canada and definitely not the United States right now at the moment. But we have been developing clean technologies here in British Columbia. Are there opportunities for us to be able to expand that relationship between Canada and the UK?
Yeah. When I think about clean energy in BC, what I think about is innovation. There's lots of really interesting companies here, and universities and other research centres really pushing the boundaries of what can be done in the clean energy space. And some of that technology is not necessarily ready for adoption locally or in North America. But there's plenty of use cases in other parts of the world, including the UK. So we always try and help innovative companies where we can to work out where their initial market might be. If it's going to be the UK, fantastic. That helps them to road test their innovation, to build it better. And then, when other countries are ready for it, they'll be here and they'll be in a position to meet that demand. Mm-hmm. I think there's always more we could do on clean energy. I think that the bits of clean energy I think are most impressive here, one is carbon capture and storage, and the other is hydrogen. I think in both cases there are some really interesting innovations happening here. But in both cases there isn't really a BC market yet for either of those technologies.
So how does carbon capture and storage benefit both the UK and British Columbia? If we have expertise here, what's the benefit in that relationship?
Well, as the UK, we're committed to building out, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but a significant amount of carbon capture capacity within the UK over the next 10 and 20 years. We want to do that at lowest possible cost and in the most effective way possible. So if there's a BC company that's come up with a fantastic way of achieving that, then we'd love to talk to them, because we'll be building out lots of carbon capture projects, and the cheaper they are, the better off we'll be. And that then gives that BC company an opportunity to really road test their kit. Because if you're an innovator, what you really need is that early adopter. Yeah. You need someone to be the first to buy it, to test it, to tell you what's wrong with it, and then you can improve it. And you've got your first Google review about your new tech, and you can go out and sell it to other people. So that's where I think the link is there.
Well, there's an interesting example, like if we move over to the hydrogen side of things and maybe the production of green hydrogen, what Walter Merida is doing out at UBC, using renewable energy to create green hydrogen and then use that as fuel. he says that he's getting great pickup in the UK. Is this an example of what's possible?
Yeah, it's a great example. And Walter's been investing in his relationships in the UK for a long time. The hydrogen sector in the UK is quite different from BC, which I think works in his favour. We've had large-scale production of hydrogen for 150 years because we've had a chemicals industry, and hydrogen has been part of that. It's not green hydrogen, but it does mean that it's a great place to test applications of hydrogen fuel cells, and how to manage hydrogen within a wider system and so on. Whereas BC hasn't had that production of hydrogen, but it has had the innovation. So it's another great example where actually the UK can be a sandbox for BC innovation.
Well, Walter points out that in the UK, he will have the ability to blend hydrogen with other fuel sources, whereas in British Columbia right now the legislation isn't in place that allows them to do that. And that's a good sign of being able to say, come do this here, can benefit both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about life sciences? This is a big part of the growing landscape, economic landscape. What are the opportunities for both British and British Columbian companies to collaborate and work in a way that benefits both economies?
So this was a huge topic in COVID, obviously, when the BC health system and the UK health system discovered that, shouldn't have been a surprise to either of them, that they were actually very similar, that the demographics in BC and in the UK are very similar. The way our health systems are structured is very compatible, and actually it was very easy to apply lessons learned in one jurisdiction to the other. I think that goes much deeper than the health system. If you look at our life sciences sector, we both have regulation that tries to achieve the same intent. We want to be pro-innovation within an ethical framework. And actually, I've simplified that, but there aren't very many jurisdictions that share that approach. So I do think there's a huge opportunity there. Almost all of the large life sciences firms from BC have offices in the UK for one reason or another. And lots of UK life sciences firms are interested in BC as well. This year we're running a project to try and make that transfer easier. We're calling it the Bio Bridge. And the idea is that if you're a company in either place, trying to do business in the other, that there's a service that helps you to work out which regulations you need to comply to, what the gap is between one place and another, where the opportunity might be in the other market, and so on. Because in life sciences, the biggest problem that companies face is regulatory burdens. Obviously, we care what we put in human bodies. We want to make sure it works and it doesn't do harm. And so proving that your innovation works and is safe is usually the largest cost of that the life sciences business faces. So if you can streamline that, because we're both trying to achieve the same thing, then that'll be good for both of us.
So life sciences resides within the innovation economy. So does genomics. And BC is in a pretty strong position there. Are there opportunities to expand that relationship as well?
I think BC Genomics has an MOU in place with Genomics UK, or perhaps Genomics England, for the same reason, that our systems are very similar, and actually we can learn quite a lot from each other by exchange of information. I think they have annual dialogues to talk about that. So I think there's plenty in there too.
A natural extension of that, of course, is IT and information technologies. Once again, we're like operating on similar systems. The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. Are there advantages also to the fact that we're both members of the Five Eyes? Especially when we start to think about that digital world, because security becomes such an important component.
Yeah, I think there's being members of the Five Eyes is useful for cybersecurity when it's related to government, and the UK will happily engage Canadian suppliers to provide cybersecurity in a way that perhaps we wouldn't with other countries. I think probably the bigger advantage that a larger range of tech companies have is that we both take a similar approach to data privacy and how we store our data. Because tech companies are data driven, so knowing that there's a friendly jurisdiction and you're not going to face compliance issues by operating in one jurisdiction or the other is helpful. The key constraint that tech companies face, and I hear this on a daily basis, is finding talent. So what we find often, what drives tech businesses to operate between the UK and Canada is trying to find the people that they need to grow their businesses. And the UK has 4 of the world's top 10 universities. The others are all in the US. We churn out talent all the time. So does Canada. We both speak English. We have a similar approach to business, like I've said. So it's a bit of a no-brainer.
Well, that talent has been very attractive to the large tech giants in the United States. That equation just may have changed last week, and maybe that bodes well for being able to strengthen the connections between our two countries.
We'll see.
I know it's too early to tell, but it is an interesting change. As you point out, we'll see. One last area of interest that I have is that there's a focus on aerospace and opportunities there. What are those opportunities?
So I do think there's a huge opportunity in the defence part of aerospace, because both the UK and Canada have committed to spending 5% of our GDP on defence. Mm-hmm. It's a huge increase for both of us. And I think we'll both be looking for trusted sources of expertise that we can draw on. So, whether that's some of the defence sector that operates out of Abbotsford, or some of the naval stuff that happens on the island, I think there's huge opportunities there on both sides. The broader aerospace sector, so fun fact, I mentioned goods isn't particularly a highlight of the economic opportunity because of the geography. The UK's top export to BC is whiskies, followed by aerospace components, so and machinery for things like mining. So it's already a huge area of opportunity, and I think we'll see that grow for sure.
And there is a focus, both from British Columbia and Canada as a whole, to increase our trading relationships with the UK and other partners.
There is. I think at the moment what we see is that kind of messaging, but we also see the kind of buy Canadian, sovereign this, sovereign that type messaging. And I understand the politics behind that, but as one of Canada's allies and friends who want to trade without barriers and do more business together, our companies do see the kind of buy Canadian messaging and the sovereignty messaging and wonder whether they're going to be at a disadvantage as well, just in the crossfire. So there's something in there, I think, as we try and find the right balance between those messages.
That's a good point to end on. Thank you very much.